There have been several things that have bothered me in the last few weeks. The latest is the attack on the U.S. postal system. Our Constitution provides that the government shall provide post roads and post offices. It has been recognized since the days of the Roman soldiers that transportation was necessary. There was a saying when I was in high school that all roads lead to Rome. In order to protect and expand their holdings in the world, the Romans built roads. And they built roads with sometimes 6 feet of road underlying material, or roadbed as they're called. When the founders of this country framed the Constitution, they realized how important communication between the citizenry was. Imagine if Paul Revere had no roads to ride on when he sounded the alarm that the redcoats were coming. The other thing that's necessary is being able to disseminate ideas among the population. Now we do have internet and we have video, we have things like what I'm doing right now, which didn't exist when I was in high school or even college. But it's a way of communicating. But how many people communicate this way? What percentage communicate this way? How many people can afford to communicate this way? If you look behind me, you see a computer and a printer. Also on the wall, you see mug shots and Rose Gallery of some of my clients when I was representing Italians in the Italian American Civil Rights League. But that's another story, another time. Anyway, the world is reliant upon communication. That is what gives cohesiveness to citizenry and builds national identity. You need that in order to be a country. If you don't have a national identity, then you have sort of a Tower of Babel. In a way, it's good that you don't have national boundaries and things such as this, because then you have one world. You have unity, but that's not in this century that I can see. In the meantime, you have various nations, various cultures, various peoples that try to survive. And they survive in linguistic groups, things such as this. One of the things that makes the Western world, or at least our world, unique is the concept of common law. And in order to have common law, you have to have commonality. And you can't have commonality when you got people flopping all over the place with various ideas. There has to be an agreement. For the adage, everybody is presumed to know the law, you have to base that on a presumption that everyone has the same historic and cultural background and values. Otherwise, you don't have that. And we see that today with the change in law, in lawsuits, in the court system, where common law really is paid lip service to, but the world is running on a Napoleonic code. But that's also an aside. Getting back to the post offices, we need post offices. We need communication between citizens. We don't need to be indoctrinated by television or even the press all the time. It's good to communicate between citizen A, citizen B, citizen D, and citizen C, and say, I think this, well, I think that, I think something else. That is where you get consensus. Over a half century ago, a sociologist named Marshall Clenard did a study about the social function of bars and taverns. and said they were one of the greatest communication and society building institutions that there were. Many middle-class suburban Republicans saw that as a reason for prohibition because the unwashed had a better chance of communicating with themselves through bars than the elite did through country clubs. But we can't abolish a postal system. And we can't privatize everything. And it seems as though the government for the last 3 or 4 decades has been trying to privatize our government. One of the most envious systems in the world was the Bell telephone system. And it created a whole network where people were able to communicate with themselves. Privatization destroyed that, and on the basis of competition, separated the Bell system, deregulated the Bell system, so that various people could exploit for profit on the citizenry's ability to communicate. One of the most extreme examples of that is what's happened in the jail institutions, where phone calls cost inmates $2. It's sort of a tax on loved ones, and who generally is in penal institution, but people that have less money than the middle class of this country. Imagine this: if you don't have a job and you're in jail and you have to get a job to get work release, you make phone calls from the jail, and immediately your prospective employer hears you have a message from a penal institution, a collect call from a penal institution. Press 1 if you wish to accept this call and pay the charges. Well, who in the hell is as a right-minded employer going to answer that kind of call? So you have a lot of people incarcerated that don't get on work release because they don't have a way of communicating with prospective employers in a fashion that would encourage that. Also, because of decline in communication facilities, it's harder to build consensuses. And that's why you get really, really serious fights in political and social issues, because people don't have a chance to get together and have consensuses. So, we have a president that said the post office is a disgrace. Well, Mr. President, I disagree with you. The way the post office and postal workers are treated is a disgrace. Certain things are needed for a society to function as a society, and communications is probably the most important one. And to commercialize a postal service, so you charge a bunch of money to send out ads and things like this, is a disservice to the population. I think advertisement probably can have the rates going, but in between people, interpersonal communications, postal service is vital. And frankly, I think the post office charges too much for personal letters already. It would be great if that could be a beneficial service to the citizens of this country. It's bad enough they have to pay for phone calls and things such as this. But in any event, I think that the people ought to get together and resist defunding or privatization or commercialization of the post office and oppose postal rates. One of the things that happened in Europe and other places was that the lines of communications helped develop the society. So the government, to establish a network of communications, established the post roads and the post offices. In Europe, that's where most of the highways were founded. That was how they got together. In this country, you had post offices putting mail cars on trains, mail trains, and sorting the postage. That subsidized the building of the railroads, along with grants of every other section of land. Airline industries carried mail, and you had airmail, and they subsidized the expansion of air flights. So you had other beneficial consequences of the idea of a post office or post service. And I don't think it's right for any administration to modify that and turn it over to any business so that it can make a profit. Certain things aren't intended for profit. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you later.